a lawyer and politician with integrity? They have existed, and this is the story of one such person. But before that, we must tell the story of a king. And before that, we must tell the quick story of a priest. It's 1517, and a priest in what is now known as Germany is making a fuss. He's upset about how indulgences are handled by the church and has taken the opportunity to write against church teachings that have been passed down for 15 centuries. Things are getting out of hand, and there is a new type of Christian that will be later known as Lutherans. I tease, I love my Lutheran and Protestant friends. As time passes, the Protestant Reformation spreads. They've made their way into England, and the Catholic King Henry VIII is not happy about it. He writes a book defending the seven sacraments. The Pope was so pleased by this book that he gave him the title Defender of the Faith, a papal title the English monarchy still holds to this day. But in 1527, things aren't looking so great for King Henry VIII. His wife, Catherine of Aragon, has given birth to several children, but only one, Mary, has survived. And, well, she's a girl. Although women could inherit the throne in England, King Henry VIII wanted a male heir. I must note here that the king was not exactly a faithful husband. He was the king, after all, and was used to getting whatever he wanted. But a young woman named Anne Boleyn came into his life. This woman, she's a little different. She refuses the king's advances. She tells him that she cannot be with him unless she is made queen. If you know how this story ends for her, you'll know in the long run, this was a bad call on Anne's part. As a Catholic, the king cannot divorce his wife. But he is king, and he is used to getting what he wants. Maybe they'll make an exception. After all, Catherine was widowed by the king's older brother, and Leviticus prohibits relations with your brother's wife. The Pope should never have allowed the marriage in the first place. Therefore, the Pope should annul it. He'll just write the Pope a letter, get his second in command to sign it, get the annulment, and then he can marry Anne. So he writes his letter and calls his second in command to sign it. Sir Thomas More. Sir Thomas More has been a faithful servant to the king, hence his knighthood. As a lawyer and member of Parliament, he has climbed the ranks to make it to Lord Chancellor, a position that is second only to the king. He is known as a family man and for his integrity, honesty, and virtue. Those are adjectives I wouldn't normally associate with a politician, but there they are. He is very much loved by the people because of his virtues. Now, remember that, because that's going to be very important later on in this story. Sir Thomas More will not sign the letter to the Pope asking for annulment for the king. This is the first time he'll cross the king by standing firm in his beliefs. But it won't be the last. Due to political reasons and the king of the Holy Roman Empire, the King of England was not granted his divorce. The king was livid. He began to purge his kingdom of clergy, shutting down monasteries and pushing anyone who spoke out against the king straying away from the church. By 1532, it had become clear to More that the king had lost his way as a Catholic. He resigned his position, citing health reasons. But the king felt that More's loyalty was dissipating. The king defied the church and married Anne. Instead of attending the coronation, More wrote a letter of congratulations. Once again, the king was angry with More, seeing the letter instead of his presence there at the coronation as a slap in the face. More had gone too far. He needed to be punished. Now, how to punish this once loyal servant? I know. Let's accuse him of accepting bribes. Remember how I told you the people loved him so much because of his integrity? Yeah. No one believed these charges. All right. Let's see, what else can we accuse him of? I know. There's that nun, Elizabeth Barton, who's been speaking out against the king and his wife. Let's say that More is conspiring against the king with her. What? More has a letter actually telling her to stay out of politics? Drat. That didn't work either. Oh well. Maybe next time. In 1534, King Henry turned his ire at the church into a power grab. I'm sure without any pressure from an angry king, Parliament passed the Act of Supremacy. This made the king supreme head of the Church of England and officially broke England away from the Catholic Church. I would like to note here that during my research on this topic, I saw a few people refer to the Church of England during this time period as a Catholic church without a pope. I just want to take a moment to point out that, according to canon law, if you turn your back on the pope, you turn your back on the church. You can disagree with the pope. Despite what you may have heard, not everything the pope says is infallible. However, to declare yourself head of the church and that the pope no longer has authority, that puts you in schism. Therefore, not Catholic. Okay, now we've got that out of the way. Moving on. England at this time was very Catholic, so this change didn't sit well with many who were devoted to their faith. The king needed to do something to help legitimize his claim as head of the church for the people that he ruled. So, he drew up an oath. By signing this oath, leaders of the faith and of the government would acknowledge the king's annulment to Catherine as well as Anne as queen, and would also acknowledge the king's position as head of the church. The king had no problem getting these leaders to sign it, including the Archbishop of Canterbury. After all, he was king, and he was used to
getting what he wanted.
But he felt he needed the signature of someone the people loved and trusted. Someone with integrity. But the second verse was same as the first, and Thomas More refused to sign yet another document the king commanded him to sign. More was arrested for treason and thrown into the Tower of London. After almost 3 months in the Tower. Wait a minute. All right, I just said 3 months, but it's actually 1 year and 3 months. And that's too big of a difference there, so I had to step in and correct it. All right, continue. With More staying true, despite his family and friends begging him to just sign the oath, More faced a trial. The jury was packed full of people loyal to the king and even included Anne's father, brother, and uncle. Oh, yeah, this should be fair. The jury took 15 minutes to deliberate his guilty verdict, and the court sentenced him to be hanged, drawn, and quartered, which was the typical punishment for treason at the time. However, the king, in remembrance of his loyal servant and friend, had the sentence commuted to being a beheading. St. Thomas More's last words were to proclaim that he was the king's good servant, but God's first. A loyal man like St. Thomas More must have really struggled. He was loyal to his country and his king. That was evident by his silence. He simply stepped down and away from a path he did not feel was moral to walk down. He refused to participate and put his name to what he saw was a departure from the church that Jesus had established. For the church, he gave his life. He is a great example of what it means to serve only one master and to put God above all things, even that which you love. Speaking of politics, I've got this video on loving your enemies that I think is a good reminder to us all on how we should handle the people who lead or want to lead our country. It might make you angry, but click on it anyway. St. Thomas More, pray for us.